Dark music plays. She was born under the open sky. But for years, she never saw the sun. Her life was stolen, her body chained, her spirit broken, deep inside the mines. She worked like a machine day after day, year after year. No one remembered. Her name, no one cared if she lived or died. To her masters, she was nothing, just another slave. But then, one day, among the noise of the mines, she saw something she never expected. A human. Not like the others. His eyes did not look at her with hate, but with something else. And from that moment, her world began to change. Because sometimes, even in the darkest place, hope can be found where you least expect it. The mines were endless. For years, the alien girl had known nothing but walls of rock, the sound of falling dust, and the heavy silence of tired souls around her. The air was always thick, and the ground shook with the weight of machines. She moved because she had to. She breathed because she still could. But in her heart, she no longer remembered what it meant to live. She had once seen the sky. She remembered light. But those memories were faint now, like old shadows fading into nothing. Time had passed so slowly that she could not tell one day from another. Every day felt the same. Work, silence, and a deep loneliness that pressed on her like a stone. She kept her head down and her eyes to the ground. Speaking too much only brought trouble. Dreams had no place here. Hope was dangerous. The other workers had stopped dreaming long ago. They moved like ghosts, eyes hollow, hearts silent. She was afraid one day she would become like them, empty and lost forever. But even in the darkest place, there was a small part of her that refused to break. She held on to one tiny thought, a quiet whisper inside. One day, I will be free. She did not know how or when, but she could not let that hope die. Without it, she was nothing. On that day, like many before it, she was deep inside the mine. Her hands were tired, her body weak, but she forced herself to continue. The walls trembled as the machines roared. Dust floated in the air like a gray mist. Around her, the others worked in silence, their eyes never meeting. No one spoke, no one dared. But then, something different happened. She felt a strange sense that someone was watching her. Slowly, she lifted her eyes, and her heart skipped a beat. There, standing not far away, was a figure unlike the others. A human. At first, she thought she was imagining it. Humans had always been part of the ones who controlled the mines, but this one was not like them. His posture was different, his eyes were different. While others looked at her with coldness, his eyes carried something else, something she could not name. He moved among the workers as if searching for something, but when his gaze met hers, it lingered for a moment too long. She quickly looked away, afraid that any attention could mean danger. Yet the image of his eyes stayed with her. They did not feel like the eyes of someone who wished to harm her. They felt curious. That night, as she lay in her small corner, she tried to forget him. She told herself it was nothing, just another face in the mines, but her mind would not let go. In the silence, she remembered the way he looked at her, as if he saw her not as a tool, not as a shadow, but as a person. The next day, she saw him again, this time closer. He carried a small container of water, and for a brief second, he set it down where only she could reach it. She froze, her hands trembled as she picked it up. Was this a mistake? Was it a trap? But when she drank, the water was real, cool against her dry throat. And when she looked up, the human was gone, leaving no trace, but the quiet gift. Her heart beat fast. Why would he do this? No one here ever showed kindness. Kindness did not exist in the mines. That night, as she lay awake, her thoughts raced. She remembered his eyes, his quiet gesture, and the strange feeling in her chest. For the first time in years, her heart felt a spark. It was small, but it was real. A spark of hope. In the following days, she noticed him again and again. Sometimes, he walked past her without a word. Sometimes she caught him glancing at her, quick and careful, as if he did not want anyone else to notice. Each time, her curiosity grew. Who was he? Why was he here? One evening, as she sat alone, she whispered to herself, "Why are you helping me?" She did not expect an answer. She did not even know if he could hear. But deep inside, she felt that somehow he was listening. The days stretched on, but now they felt different. The mine was still dark, still heavy, but she no longer felt fully alone. She had no words for it, but she could sense that something was beginning to change, and though she did not yet understand, she felt it in her heart. Her life, once trapped in endless shadows, was moving toward something unknown, something brighter, something she had never dared to believe in again: hope. The mine had become a place where days blended into each other, but after the girl saw the human, the air felt different. She tried to convince herself that it was nothing, just her tired mind playing tricks, but deep inside, she knew she had not imagined the look in his eyes. It was too clear, too real. The next day, she noticed him again. He walked with calm steps, his eyes moving over the ground, yet always returning to her. When she bent down to pick up a heavy stone, she found another small container of water placed near her feet. Her hands froze. No one else seemed to notice. She lifted it quickly and pressed it to her lips. The water was cool, almost sweet, and for a brief moment, she felt alive. When she looked up, he was already gone. She began to wait for him, even though she told herself not to. Every sound of footsteps made her glance up, searching for that quiet figure. Most of the time, he passed without a word, without any sign. But sometimes, when the others were busy, he left small things near her corner: water, a piece of clean cloth, once even a small piece of fruit. These things were simple, but to her, they were treasures greater than gold. She wondered why he was doing this. Humans had never been known for kindness toward her kind. Every day of her life had taught her that. Yet this one was different. He did not speak. He did not smile, but his actions carried meaning stronger than words. One evening, when the workers rested in silence, she found herself whispering softly, "Why?" She knew he could not hear, but the question stayed in her heart. Why was he helping her? What did he want? Days passed, and she began to notice small changes in herself. Her steps felt lighter. Her heart did not feel as empty. The darkness was still around her, but there was now a small flame inside that refused to fade. She guarded it carefully, afraid that if she let it grow too much, it might be taken away. One night, as the machines fell silent, she felt a presence nearby. She opened her eyes and saw him standing a short distance away, half hidden in the shadows. Her heart raced. For a moment, neither moved. Then, with slow steps, he came closer and crouched down. He whispered so softly that only she could hear, "You are not alone." Her eyes widened. His voice was gentle, almost careful, as if he was afraid the words might break. She wanted to speak, but her throat felt tight. All she could do was nod slightly. He left as quietly as he came, but his words stayed with her. Long after, "You are not alone." From that night on, their silent bond grew. He never spoke much, and she never dared to ask questions, but in small ways, they began to understand each other. A look, a gesture, the brief meeting of eyes, it was enough. She noticed how carefully he moved, how he studied the walls and paths of the mine. At first, she thought nothing of it, but slowly, she realized he was not only working, he was observing, learning. He paid attention to the doors, the guards, the way the tunnels twisted. He moved with purpose, as if he was searching for something. Her heart filled with questions she could not ask. Was he planning something? Was she part of it? Could he truly mean to help her? Every time doubt tried to take over, she remembered the water, the fruit, the words, "You are not alone," and hope. That fragile flame inside her began to burn brighter. But with that hope came fear. If the others saw them, if anyone noticed his quiet acts of kindness, it could bring danger to both of them. She tried to keep her distance, but her heart no longer obeyed. Every step he took felt like a thread pulling her closer. One day, as she sat against the cold wall after a long shift, he walked past her. For a moment, their eyes met, and he gave the smallest nod, almost invisible. To anyone else, it would mean nothing, but to her, it was a promise. That night, as she lay awake, she realized something had changed forever. The mines were still dark, her chains were still heavy, but her spirit was no longer the same. She was no longer just surviving, because now she believed that this human was not here by accident. She believed he had a reason, a secret, a plan. And though she did not know what it was, she felt in her heart that her life was about to turn towards something she could not yet see. For the first time in years, she closed her eyes with a whisper of hope on her lips, and in the quiet of the mine, she let herself dream just a little of freedom. The days in the mine had always been empty, but now they carried a strange weight. Every moment seemed to hold a secret, every silence felt alive. The alien girl had begun to wait for those small chances when her eyes might meet the humans. She did not speak, and he did not speak often. Yet their quiet connection grew stronger with each passing day. One evening, when the air was still and most of the workers had closed their eyes in tired rest, she felt a presence near her corner. Slowly, she opened her eyes and saw him standing there. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The dim light from the wall reflected in his eyes, and she noticed something she had not seen before: determination. He sat down on the cold ground, just close enough for his words to reach her without being heard by others. His voice was low, calm, and steady. "You will not be here forever," he whispered. Her heart jumped at those words. They were soft, but they carried strength, like a promise carved into stone. She wanted to ask how. She wanted to ask why, but no sound left her lips. She simply looked at him, and he seemed to understand her unspoken questions. "I have seen a way," he said quietly. "Not yet, but soon. When the moment comes, you must trust me." Her breath caught. Trust. The word was heavy. For so long, she had trusted no one, not even herself. But looking into his eyes, she felt the ground shift beneath her heart. She wanted to believe. For the next days, she noticed his movements more carefully. He was no ordinary worker. While others followed the same routines, he observed. His eyes studied the walls, the paths, the doors that opened and closed. He memorized the sound of the machines, the rhythm of the shifts, the moments when the guards were distracted. Sometimes she wondered if she was imagining it all. But then she would see the small marks he left along the stone, tiny scratches. Only someone looking closely could notice. He was mapping the place in his mind, piece by piece. At night, when she closed her eyes, she thought about his words. "You will not be here forever." The thought was dangerous, yet beautiful. It made her heart beat faster. It made her imagine a life beyond the tunnels, a life she had forgotten she could want. One day, as they passed each other in the narrow tunnel, he slowed just enough to slip a folded piece of cloth into her hand. Her fingers tightened around it quickly, hiding it before anyone could see. Later, when she opened it in the shadows, she found inside a small piece of bread and something even more precious. Drawings made with simple lines. The drawings showed the mine's tunnels, the doors, the paths leading away. At first, she could not believe it. He was showing her the way out. Her hands trembled as she traced the lines. For years she had believed the walls were endless. But here, in her hands, was proof that there was more. Proof that escape was not just a dream. That night, when he came near again, she looked at him with wide eyes. She wanted to ask if this was real, if freedom was truly possible. He nodded once, slow and certain. "Not yet," he whispered. "But when I tell you, follow." Her heart burned with both hope and fear. If they failed, everything would be lost. But if they succeeded, she would see the sky again. The next days moved like a storm inside her mind. Every sound of footsteps, every turn of the tunnel, she wondered if it was the moment. Every time he passed her, her heart asked, "Is it now?" But he gave no signal. He was waiting, planning, preparing, and so she waited too, for the first time. She did not feel only like a prisoner. She felt like someone carrying a secret, a fragile thread that connected her to something bigger than the mine, something brighter. One evening, as the shadows stretched long, she heard his voice again. This time, there was no hesitation. His words were quiet but firm. "When the chance comes, you must be ready. Do not look back. Do not stop. Trust me, and you will see the light again." Her eyes filled with tears she had not allowed herself to shed for years. She bowed her head, not in despair, but in silent promise. In that moment, she understood. She was no longer just waiting for survival. She was waiting for freedom. And she was not waiting alone. The days inside the mine, began to change in ways the alien girl could not fully explain. The tunnels were still dark, the air still heavy, yet every moment felt charged with something unseen. She carried a secret now, a secret that lived in her heart and in the small piece of cloth hidden in her corner. The map he had drawn. She studied the lines whenever she could, tracing the paths with her finger, memorizing each turn. The map was simple, but to her it felt like a star in the night sky, showing that there was something beyond this endless stone. She hid it carefully, fearing that even the dust might betray her secret. The human never spoke much, but his presence was steady. He moved with quiet purpose, blending in as if nothing about him was unusual. Yet she could see it now. Every glance, every step, every small pause was part of something larger. He was watching, learning, waiting. One evening, when the others rested, he came near her again. His voice was calm, but his eyes carried urgency. "There is a way," he whispered, "but timing is everything. We must wait for the right moment." She nodded, though her heart was racing. She wanted to ask when, how, why he was risking everything, but her lips stayed closed. She understood that too many words could shatter something fragile. The following days felt endless. She noticed him testing small things. He brushed his hand along the walls, as if checking their strength. He tapped his fingers lightly, as though counting the rhythm of the guard's steps. He lingered near doors a little longer than he should have, studying their locks, their hinges. To others, he looked like just another worker moving slowly. But to her, he was building a plan with every silent observation. Once, when he passed her in the narrow tunnel, their shoulders brushed slightly. He slipped something into her hand so quickly that no one else noticed. It was a small shard of metal, shaped just enough to pry at something. She hid it in her sleeve, her heart thudding. She did not yet know how it would be used, but she trusted that he had given it for a reason. That night, she lay awake and let herself dream of the moment he spoke of. She imagined the doors opening, the air outside rushing in, the light touching her face. She tried to remember what the sky looked like. It had been so long. Her memory of it was like a painting faded by time. But even if she could no longer recall its exact color, she knew it would feel warm, free, endless. The human began to speak more often, though always in whispers and only when the shadows were thick enough to hide their words. He told her that there was a shift in the guard's routine, a moment of weakness in the pattern. He said there was a hidden tunnel long abandoned, its entrance sealed but not destroyed. That was where the map led. Her pulse quickened with every word. The plan sounded fragile, almost impossible. Yet there was something in his voice that made her believe. He never spoke with doubt, only with quiet certainty. And she clung to that certainty as if it were her lifeline. Days became nights, and nights became days. Waiting was harder than she expected. Every time the machines roared, she thought the moment had come. Every time footsteps echoed louder, she held her breath. But the human did not signal yet. He was still watching, still preparing. In the silence of the mine, her thoughts began to change. For years, she had seen herself as nothing more than a shadow, a life buried in stone. But now, with every secret glance, every hidden gift, she felt herself becoming something else. She was no longer only surviving, she was part of something larger, something that could change her fate. One night, as he crouched near her corner, he spoke words that made her heart tremble. "When the chance comes, there will be no second chance. You must follow without fear. Do you understand?" She met his gaze and, for the first time in years, found her voice. Her words were soft, but steady. "I understand." A silence passed between them, but it was not empty. It was filled with trust, fragile but strong. For so long, she had trusted no one. Now, she trusted him completely. The days ahead would test them both. The plan was dangerous, the risks heavy, but she no longer felt powerless. She no longer felt forgotten. Because now, she knew the path existed. And when the moment came, she would walk it. And for the first time in her long years underground, she dared to believe that her chains were already beginning to break quietly, invisibly, but surely. The days after her escape were not easy. The alien girl, once chained and silenced, was now surrounded by a world she had never known, one filled with choices, voices, and freedom that felt both heavy and fragile. She often woke in the middle of the night, her breathing fast, her hands searching for shackles that were no longer there. Each time she realized she was free, she would whisper to herself, as if reminding her own heart, "The human set me free. I am no longer a slave." The human who helped her, named Daniel, never treated her like she was fragile, yet never left her alone either. He guided her step by step, teaching her about the simple things she had missed all her life: how to eat food slowly instead of swallowing it in fear, how to sleep without waiting for orders, how to walk without looking at the ground. Every small thing became a lesson, and every lesson carried both pain and wonder. But freedom was not only about learning, it was about remembering too. Sometimes, she sat quietly by herself, staring at the stars, lost in her own thoughts. She wondered why the human had helped her, why he risked his own safety for someone the world had forgotten. Slowly, she began to realize something she had never felt before: trust. She trusted him, not because of words, but because of actions. Still, not everyone around them looked kindly upon her presence. Whispers followed her wherever she went. Some aliens, and even some humans, doubted her. They saw her as nothing more than a burden, a reminder of chains and control. She felt their eyes on her, sharp and cold, and sometimes she wished she could disappear. But Daniel always stood beside her. When others questioned her worth, he simply said, "She is free now. That is all that matters." His words gave her strength. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky with golden light, she asked Daniel a question that had been locked inside her heart. "Why did you free me? You did not know me. I was nothing to you." Her voice shook, as if she was afraid of the answer. Daniel looked at her for a long time before replying, "Because no one deserves to live without choice. You are not nothing. You are you." His words struck her deeply, leaving her unable to speak. For the first time, she began to see herself as someone who had value. Her journey was not over. Freedom was only the beginning. She still had to find out who she truly was, beyond the chains, beyond the silence. And perhaps, for the first time, she began to believe that her future could be written not by others, but by her own hands. Yet deep in her heart, she knew shadows of her past would try to follow. There were those who might not accept her new life, who might try to take back what they believed they owned. The thought unsettled her. But this time she was not alone. This time, she had someone who would stand beside her, not as a master, but as a friend. And as she walked under the wide night sky, feeling the stars watching over her, she whispered to herself, once again, not out of fear, but out of hope, "I am free, and I will never go back." The ship drifted quietly through the stars, far from the world where pain and control had once ruled her life. For the first time, she felt no weight on her shoulders, no eyes watching her every move. The silence inside the ship felt strange, almost too quiet, yet it was filled with something new: hope. She looked at the human who had stayed by her side through every storm. His presence was steady, his voice calm, and his eyes never carried judgment, only care. She often thought about the chains that once bound her, and how they were not only around her body, but also her heart. Those chains had told her she was nothing, that she existed only to serve. But now, when she caught her reflection in the ship's glass, she saw someone different. She saw a person who could stand, breathe, and even dream again. The human had given her that gift, not with promises, but with small acts: listening, protecting, and most of all, believing she was more than what her past had made her. The stars outside seemed endless, each one shining like a path to a future she had never thought she could reach. But still, there was fear. What if her past found her again? What if freedom was only a short dream before being taken away once more? She turned to the human with those questions in her eyes, though her lips stayed quiet. He answered not with words, but with a simple gesture, his hand stretched out, open and waiting. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. That single touch carried more strength than any promise. In that moment, she realized she was not alone anymore. Even if the past tried to return, she was no longer the same. She had found someone who saw her not as a slave, not as property, but as a soul worth fighting for. Together, they stepped into the unknown, The universe was vast, full of dangers and mysteries, but it was also full of new beginnings, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that her story was not about chains, but about breaking them, not about being owned, but about choosing her own path. And so, as the ship carried them deeper into the stars, she whispered softly words that were more powerful than any chain that ever held her. I am free.